Welcome, subscribers, and viewers alike, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to tell you a short D&D one-shot that I did with one of my friends. This technically has 2 players in it, but only one of them is actually going to be shown in the context of this, so it's going to be told like there's just 1 player. This is something pretty new and different for my channel, but I think it would be fun to do, and maybe I'll do it in the future again if people enjoy it enough. So let's begin. We start with a green dragon-born warlock. A bit of backstory, this is Spectere, she's a warlock, and her patron is Aslan from Narnia. So her character has a bit of something special. She has a little book, and whenever Aslan tries to talk to her, she'll have a faint ringing in her ears. And then she has to open the book and then read what Aslan has to say. So it starts with Spectere in the small city of Alchi. The king of Alchi has summoned her there, or just adventurers in general, but she's the one who answered the call, to deliver a letter to the Prince of Akavi. Neither of these 2 places, Alchi or Akavi, are actual places in the D&D world, they're just places I've made up. In the city of Alchi, there are homes, places of business, and other common buildings and places found in cities. She was heading towards the castle. She arrived at the castle gates, and the guards quickly let her in after she tells them that she's the adventurer that the king had ordered. They lead her through the castle into a throne room, where the king sits on his throne. She bows respectfully and says, "Oh, mighty king, we have arrived at your command. Might I ask of your mission?" Now, the king is very young, he's a human, and he seems very pleased with the show of respect, the bow. He tries to maintain a look of disinterest, though, like he is too good for a common folk, even an adventurer. He says, "You have been called here to deliver a letter to the Prince of Akavi. I would have my men deliver the letter, but there has been an unfortunate worm problem on the trail there. My men are strong, but not as strong as an experienced adventurer such as yourself." After he finishes talking, he makes a gesture to one of his guards, who pulls out a letter and hands it out to Spectre. She takes the letter and asks, "May I ask, your majesty, what do you mean by worm problem?" He responds with, "Just a small-ish, large-ish amount of sandworms that have decided to take up residence on the road from here to Akavi. However, I would suggest you don't ask too many questions, as that letter will kill the carrier in 5 days unless the keyword is spoken to it. Call it incentive to deliver the letter and not just run out with it. Oh, also the letter is now magically bound to you, and if you destroy it, it will just appear again in your hands, so off you go now, and hopefully you can move fast." Spectre does a double take, and the grin on her face fades. She takes a deep breath and thanks the king for his time and leaves for Akavi. As she leaves the castle, she realizes that she has no clue where or what Akavi is. She takes a deep breath and decides to go to an inn and ask around for help. She enters an inn called the Lazy Innkeeper and sees no one in the lobby other than the innkeeper himself sleeping at the front desk. There are a few tables and chairs in the lobby as well, with all the rooms being located upstairs. She grins and thinks for a minute. A keyword could break the spell, meaning she could simply go to the library and read every word in every language until she hit the keyword, which I will say would really just not have been that wise. She also thought alternatively she could ask a guard who would laugh at her, or she could go back to the king and be called a wuss and thrown in jail, which I don't think I would really do. But that's her choice. That was her choice then. She has decided to go to a shop instead to find a map. The shop she went to was known as the Citizens General Goods, and it was run by a tabaxi, which is just a cat person, not a furry, disclaimer, not a furry, who just finished up with another customer when she walked in. "What is it I can get for you today?" She asks if he has a map featuring the land of Akavi. I feel kind of bad for not giving her more information on how to get to Akavi, but she never asked, so "Yes, that I do. Here, let me get one for you. Feel free to browse while I'm gone." And then he turns around and goes through a doorway that she could only assume leads to a storage area. Inside the store, there's things people would generally find in a general goods store, such as shoes, ropes and arrows, and also some less common things such as animal teeth, animal skulls, and other various animal bones. Most of the creatures are common, but a few are very exotic and uncommon. The shopkeeper returns with a map, and she pays 5 gold for it, and sets off for Akavi. I will say that the 5 gold for a map is a complete scam. How I'm doing this world is the average person, like NPC, would make 1 gold a week, and so 5 gold is like super expensive for a map. After looking at the map for a while, she realized that Akavi is in a desert and is about a 4-day walk from Alchi. Reminder, she has 5 days to deliver the letter before As she begins the long trek to Akavi, she goes through small farming villages leading into large open fields. At this point, it is dark out and getting late. She is hungry from the travel and needs rest. She goes to one of the small farming villages and asks if there is an inn anywhere. She kept getting one resounding answer: there is no inn that they knew of, but there was a bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple that she could stay in for a silver a night. This is a very small town made up of exclusively houses, fields, barns, and a couple very small shops. After staying at the bed and breakfast, she awakes to the elderly woman cooking her a breakfast of eggs and bread. Spectre thanks her for her hospitality and leaves. She passes through more fields and forests. She travels for hours until it becomes dark out. She's going through a field, and there are no buildings or civilization anywhere around her for miles. There's a distant howling of wolves and a chill of wind. Despite the chill and the wolves, she continues on until the howling gets louder. She sees wolves, but not normal wolves that would potentially be afraid of a 6.5-foot dragonborn. These are dire wolves. Now, I will say that for this, dire wolves were a bit too powerful against just one person, so I just toned down their health, and then, well, you'll see. Initiative is rolled, and she goes last. The wolves start circling, and out of nowhere, a bunch of skeletons come flying in and start attacking the wolves. By the count, there are about 15 skeletons. She tries to convince the skeletons that she is on their side, rolls low, and just kinda says, hey, I'm not trying to cause any trouble, just let me go on my way, but the skeletons don't interact with her in any way. They just keep attacking the wolves. As they attack, they swarm one wolf and bludgeon it with the hilts of swords until it's unconscious. They don't kill the wolves, just knock them out. Spectre attempts to Eldritch Blast a wolf, misses, and it's the skeletons having another turn. And then the wolf attacks the skeletons. Skeletons get hit, skeletons attack, knock out more wolves. Another Eldritch Blast is fired and missed, and as all the wolves are knocked unconscious by the skeletons don't do anything to Spectre. They kind of just ignore her as they pick up the 5 dire wolves and start walking away. She tries to say, thanks for your help, I'm sorry I'm so bad at this, but they just pause, look at her, and continue walking. She watches them leave, somewhat confused, but also grateful. Spectre debates whether she should set up camp or put some distance between the skeletons and her. She hears more howling, and after walking, sees a pack of wolves again. She's able to roll high on stealth and just skirt around them, though. She finds herself in a sparse forest. She finds a nice large tree and sits under it for some shade. She doesn't have a tent or bedroll or anything, so she just walks around, finds a cave. She also finds some nice dry wood to get a fire going, but instead of doing any of that, she just climbs a tree and sleeps in it. In the morning, she hops out of the tree and begins her 3rd day on the journey to Akavi. As she makes her way, the grass turns to sand and the trees to rocks, and heat waves are clearly visible. As she's walking, she sees in the far distance a large structure that she can't quite make out. It deviates from the path quite a ways. As she keeps on the road, she meets a young man passed out. And by me, I mean she almost trips over him on the side of the road. She picks him up and just starts carrying him, and then she remembers that she has the spell Healing Elixir, casts that, and wakes the man up with it, basically. "Who are you? Where am I?" he says in a squeaky voice. She asks the man, do I walk away from the big structure or towards it? I'm on a deadline and I don't want to die. The healing is free of charge and there's a village a day's walk from here. The man is confused that she's asking her this question, and it's not her accidentally asking it like a question to the player and me interpreting it as a question to me. No, there's no confusion here. She's just asking the NPC if she should go to the structure or not. Now, Dragonborn is not a common race in the D&D world, and it's the middle of the night, moon reflecting off her scally skin or whatever it is Dragonborns have. Pretty scary sight for this timid man. She introduces herself to him as Erix and tells him that he's in the desert of Akavi. He looks around at her confused and less frightened. Are you asking me if you should go towards the structure that I don't even know about? I don't even know where I am. He seems even more confused. The last thing I remember was being taken from my home by skeletons in the night. They knocked me unconscious, then you woke me up here. Well, hey, you needed help, I need help, I gotta deliver a letter in 2 days or it will straight up kill me, so how about we both go to Akavi together and solve our problems? And then she decides to definitely not go to the structure because she thinks that the skeletons are probably living there. The man makes Spectre promise not to eat him, and they set out together to Akavi. They walk for a while, and her new friend needs to stop to rest. He's tired and has a nasty bump on his head, probably from where the skeletons knocked him unconscious. She looks around for a hideaway, but there's nothing but sand and packed sand where the road is, rocks of varying sizes all over, and holes in the ground. Something that she was very worried about before was the sandworms, as they're a homebrew of my own creation that she knows nothing about. Her character knows nothing about. She never tried to go to a library or some other place where she could potentially get information on them. So I'm pretty sure she's envisioning these sandworms as like these giant, like, Bronchiosaurus-sized worms that can swallow her whole. They're not. They're like the same thickness as her wrist, and probably about like 10 feet long. So big, but not too big. She somehow pieces it together that these must be sandworm holes, and she tells the man to keep walking, and that she could even carry him. He visibly does not like the idea of her carrying him. What is a sandworm? He has a look of terror on his face. She says, "Relax, I've dealt with worst. It's just a giant worm that lives underground. If you're so worried about your safety, I have an extra weapon or two you could use if worst comes to worst." He takes a weapon, although warns her that he has no training. He says he has a family and he needs to get back to them alive, assuming the skeletons didn't kill them. She offers him a mace, a dagger, a knife, or a longbow. He takes one of the maces, and Spectre attempts to make a stealth check to try to get around the sandworm holes. So here's the thing, it's the middle of the night for them. How I have it written down for sandworms, they don't attack during the night, they are awake during the day. They are not nocturnal animals, completely diurnal, and unless they are greatly disturbed, they would not come out of the ground at night. She rolls a stealth check, and rolls very low. However, her character doesn't realize this. Her character thinks that she's just as sneaky as can be. As she's walking, she trips, hits the ground hard, and whispers to herself, "You know, you would think I would be above making a fool of myself at this point," as she feels tremors underneath the ground. She tells the man to get behind her, and they both hold up their weapons ready to fight sandworms. But nothing happens. No more tremors. She tries to check to see if she can find where the tremors were coming from. She doesn't know about sandworms, but she can tell that there are none active around her. There's just no more tremors. No vibrations in the ground. The man looks like he's about to pass out. By the way, I'm gonna keep referring to him as the man because she never actually asked his name. She attempts to roll stealth again, rolls almost as low as last time, trips again, feels more tremors, and then just continues as the tremors end. At this point, the man's too tired to care about the worms. He just starts walking and passes out on the ground. She picks him up again and continues through the night. As the sun rises and warms the rocks, the man wakes up and screams, as obviously he's terrified of being picked up by the 6.5-foot green dragonborn, who looks like she could just smash his skull open. At this point, she's very close to Akavi. However, it is the 5th day of her journey, meaning that at tomorrow's morning, the letter would explode. She's able to estimate that it's about another 2 hours walking to get to Akavi. The man expresses worry that he has no money to purchase a horse or carriage to get back to his home, and even if he could buy a horse, he doubts it could ride well over the sand. She tries to comfort him by telling him that the letter is for the Prince of Akavi, whom is not only rich enough to buy 1,000 carriages, but also will be overjoyed that we, emphasis on the we, trying to make this man think that he actually is helping her, managed to deliver the letter to him. Especially seeing as all the rest of the messengers didn't make it. "We'll get you home, I'm sure of it," and they continued to Akavi. As they approached there, Akavi is a significantly larger city than Alchi, with a castle directly in the center. Spectre masks her terror at being in such a new place and heads to the castle. She arrives to a large wooden door, and in front of it stand 2 guards. "What business have you here?" She coughs. "I have an urgent letter from the King of Alchi." She holds up the letter. The guard takes the letter from her hand and reads the back of it. He seems satisfied with this and hands it back to her. "Right through this door and take the second left," he says with a grin. As she walks through the castle, there are bookshelves filled with exotic books, glass cases with great weapons, shields, and amulets on display, and most impressively of all, an imp skeleton hanging from the ceiling. She continues down a hall and takes a left. She stands in a small carpeted room with a fire in the fireplace. In the center sits who she could only assume to be the Prince of Akavi. She greets him and hands him the letter. He seems mildly amused when she holds out the letter and asks her to read it to him. Now, one thing about this letter is she was unable to open it unless she had the keyword, or so she thought, as she easily opens the letter as she would any other letter. She has a look of surprise on her face that makes the prince roar roar with laughter. I take it Alice, the king of Alchi, told you the story of the exploding letter, he asks with amusement in his eyes. That's a small game we like to play. If we have a letter for each other, we get an adventurer to deliver it, and we tell them it will explode if they don't. And make sure the letter is delivered on time, and it's good for a laugh. Spectre is kind of upset, kind of having expected this, and takes a deep breath to read the letter. However, the prince quickly snatches it out of her hands and tells her that he merely wanted to see her open the letter for a laugh, and that he will read it himself. I suppose he left the payment up to me, didn't he? What kind of troubles did you have on the road? I will cover it and give extra. This whole time, the man from the road is just quivering next to her in fear, as he's in the presence of a prince. She warns the prince that she saw the band of skeletons who were kidnapping people and creatures, and that the fellow was a victim of them, and asked to have him sent home safely. The prince said he would be happy to, and that he would have his stable master set him up with a chorkney, which is a large flightless bird ridden much like a horse over the sands. And what of your payment, he asks her. She decides that 60 gold would cover the costs, and by that I mean she wants 60 gold, and is afraid to ask for more than that. Very well then, he says. He snaps his finger and 4 butlers come in with a chest of gold. The prince reaches into it and counts out 60 pieces to give to her. She thanks him and bows and leaves. With the letter delivered, that is where this small one-shot ends. Now, this wasn't too interesting, but I hope that some people enjoyed it, and I would love to continue this. If people did enjoy it, let me know by leaving a comment or leaving a like, or if you're feeling especially nice and wanting me to know that you enjoyed this, subscribe, because I love it when that number that is currently at 55 goes up. I will do more of this if people enjoy it, and thank you all so much for watching this.